Yo, what's up guys? It's your local Beanie Boy. I'm back at it again, a whale music, doing music reviews. And it looks like it's about that time. January is over and February is finally upon us. So that means it's time for a month in review. This is the part of the show where I talk about all the new records I listened to this month. There wasn't that much so far, and we've already heard my thoughts on 2 albums already, but I'd like to get a whole list out there to share everything I've listened to. The good, the bad, and the utterly awful. So let's begin with the very first album I listened to in 2019. The first album I listened to this year was na-kel Smith's 2019. It was released in early January. It's the debut album from skateboarder and friend of Tyler the Creator and Earl Sweatshirt. Although I love the works from these two artists, na-kel Smith fell very short. And this was very disappointing for me because he had good features on both of the other artists' songs. But his album is disappointing, bland, and just generic hip-hop. Every track on here seems rushed, unfinished, and lacking in so much. There weren't any moments that grabbed me on this record, and nothing that stood out on either the production or lyrical side. Just not much to say about this record except that it's not great. Sadly, this got an F from me. The next record I listened to this year was James Blake's Assume Form. I've already given a full review on this one, so if you want to check that out, that's down in the description. Overall, a great alternative ambient R&B record with romantic poetry from James Blake, and I gave this one a B. Coming up next is Sharon Van Etten's Remind Me Tomorrow. An excellent and refreshing turn in Van Etten's discography over here. A lot of the tracks on here are painted with great depth and color, grimy synths, banging drums, and Sharon's mature, deep voice all combine to create an absolutely scrumptious atmosphere of darker flavored synth pop and rock. Notable tracks on here are No One's Easy to Love, Comeback Kid, Jupiter 4, 17, and Stay. Although the opener is a low point to the album and the worst track, the rest of the record offers an amazing listen. I'm giving this one an A-. I really enjoyed it, and it's in the running for my best record so far. Malibu Ken's self-titled I also gave a full record review to, so again, you can check a link down in the description for that. Overall, it's a dark, bizarre, and eccentric take on hip-hop, filled with these juicy synths from Tobacco and Aesop Rock's usually esoteric bars. I gave this an A-, and this is the second album that's in the running for my top pick early on. Weezer's The Teal album. A surprise on many levels. A goofy, unintentionally hilarious, and bizarre cover album from Weezer. There are some tracks on here that are refreshing takes on some classic tunes, mainly Africa, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, and No Scrubs. On these tracks, Weezer actually adds something worthwhile here, and to much success, adding punchier drums, rougher guitars, spikier synths, and at times, even vocal swagger. However, most just turn out to be blundering, embarrassing, and messy disasters, especially Take On Me, Paranoid, Mr. Blue Sky, and Billie Jean. Instead of Weezer attempting to make these songs their own, they simply poorly impersonate the majority of the artists. I'm giving this record a D, although if you want to check out something that's actually funny, yet not a parody album, listen to this. Future's The Wizard is the next album I listened to, and yet another flop of a hip-hop album. Filled with repetitive trap beats, flows, and overall sound of production, this album doesn't hold too many high points. Granted, I do hate trap with a burning passion, and the majority of trap music I've listened to has always sounded the same. The oversaturation of the same hi-hat sounds and patterns, the same 808 sounds and patterns, the same snare sounds and patterns, the same auto-tune sounds and patterns, over and over again. With the rapper offering close to nothing on lyrics as well, it just makes records like these massive snooze fests for me. Although the production value on here is better than na-kel Smith's record, it still has nothing compared to what amazing stuff is occurring in the rap game right now. Even this month, Malibu Ken is a much better pick for a rap album in my opinion. and I'm giving this one a D. Next up, I've got Maggie Rogers' Heard It in a Past Life. This is the debut album from singer-songwriter Maggie Rogers. A decent, straight-up pop album. It has pretty decent production on most tracks. Overall, it's pretty pleasant to listen to, despite its repetitive and samey nature. Everything on here doesn't stand out too much, save for a few tracks, yet overall, nothing really is worth talking about. Nothing grabbed me. The piece as a whole it kind of blends in with all the other pop albums out there. Like I said before, nothing really much to say about it. The songwriting and instrumentals are just kind of bland, although the sound production is decent. It gets a C from me. Just straight average record. I wouldn't waste your time listening. Toro y Moi's Outer Peace is the next record I listened to. A disappointing ride through electronic and experimental pop and R&B. Toro y Moi shifts genres again on Outer Peace. This thing is filled with repetitive bass lines, drums, and synth instruments that frankly just go over your head and become pure ambience for a while. Delivering fairly average and stale tracks on the first side of the album, the second side has a couple of tracks that are nearly unlistenable. The lowest point of this record is definitely Freelance, where Toro y Moi's vocals take a hilariously ugly turn. Walk on the water, for me! Despite having a disaster of a track on here, everything else stays pretty tame, yet not producing anything that really jumps out at me in a good way. This thing gets a C- from me. Dear Hunters, Why Hasn't Everything Already Disappeared? It's a fairly bland and average ride through indie rock music. I really hate having to talk about all these average records. Anyway, nothing really on this record jumps out at me, just like a lot of the other albums I listened to this month. I wasted time with this music. Hopefully next month will be better. Like I said again and before, a lot of records this month, just not much to say about it. It's stale. Don't waste your time listening to it. There's nothing absolutely awful on here, but it's just so meh. A straight C again. Next up, and the last album on this list, is Blockhead's Free Sweatpants. Legendary underground hip-hop producer is back with this pretty decent record. I like quite a few of the tracks on here, but I've been a pretty big Blockhead fan over the years. He's had a long history of working with Aesop Rock and other gods of the underground hip-hop scene. Don't really have much to say about this one either, other than there are some solid beats on this tape. Interesting sample work and cool rhythm work here. There's some great features on it as well. Aesop Rock has a feature on this, as well as some other underground rappers that are lesser known. I checked this thing out for the features, and if instrumental beats are your kind of thing, they offer some nice tracks on here. I'm giving this one a B-. So, that closes out my listening experience this month. My favorite records so far are definitely Malibu Ken's self-titled and Sharon Van Etten's Remind Me Tomorrow. James Blake's Assume Form, however, is still a very honorable mention on this list. I'd recommend all three of those. So as we know now, those are my top picks, but of course we've got a whole year of music left to review, 11 months, but we've knocked off the first 12th of the year right here. So, until then, we've got more music to review, but now, peace out.